Today on Aussie Arvos, we're continuing my shed build as we turn this old back room into a fully functional fabrication bay.
Now in the last episode of the shed build, you guys would have seen us transform this old back shed into two rooms, one being a storage area and the other being an area for welding and fabrication.
Now the idea of putting all this in a separate room is that all the grinding dust and mess can stay back there and this area can stay clean for vehicles and storage. Now this fabrication bay is going to be used for metal storage as well as cutting, grinding, drilling, welding and basically anything to do with metal fabrication. Now as you can see, it's a bit of a mess in here. So before we start putting anything new in here, we're going to go through, clear all this out, get a bit of a floor plan and work out what we're going to do, and then we'll start fitting it out. So the first two things I'm actually installing are the linishing belt, which I've decided to put on the wall, this little linisher. I've just screwed it straight into the wall studs that I've got behind this wall, so that's plenty solid enough. So then I put the grinder pedestal down here. Now that I'm just dyno bolting, or screw bolting I should say, to the floor. They are these little things here. So you just drill your thread holes straight in the floor and then gun the bolts into the concrete. They're super solid, and the best thing is if you ever want to move it, you can just ungun the bolts straight out of the floor and all you're left with is holes, unlike with dyno bolts where you've got little studs sticking up you've got to cut off, otherwise you keep tripping over them. Alright, so that is the grinder mounted on the pedestal down the back. That's all sorted. The linisher's mounted on the wall, so that's all sweet. So pretty much done down the back there for the minute. Going to move on to putting this pegboard up on the wall behind the cold cut saw there, as I said earlier, to hang all grinding discs and all that sort of things on. So I'll get that done, get that mounted, and then I'm going to move on to actually stripping down this old blacksmith's vise and cleaning that up, and then mounting the pedestal for it up the front here, and then mounting the vise to the pedestal. Alright, so I've gone way harder on this than I initially planned on going, but that thing is never going to move. So I've still got to bolt the vise down, it's just sitting there with a clamp on it at the moment, but took the existing pedestal, trimmed down the top plate, made a new top plate, welded that on, welded on a bottom plate to mount the bottom of the vise to, and then also ended up putting a little brace on that, which it probably didn't need, but I want to be able to hit it with a hammer and not have the thing shake and vibrate, and it's meant to be a real solid vise, and I thought it's worthy of a real solid pedestal, so that should do it. Alright, with that sitting in position, hopefully it should just bolt straight up. That might be the most over-engineered vise pedestal getting around, but that is going to be super handy. I'm actually just kind of happy to see this vise getting used again. This was, as I said, it was my granddad's, and it's just sort of sat in the corner of a shed for years. So yeah, never really had anywhere to put it. But now that I'm setting up this space, I've actually got some room to put the thing. So hence why I've gone to all the effort of making the pedestal good. Keen to actually see this thing back in action.
So with the vise now mounted, we're going to begin installing our roller benches. Now I scored these second-hand from a factory clearing auction. These will allow us to easily roll heavy steel when we need to cut or drill it.
Alright, so I've cut the steel to make the legs for the roller bench. Now it's real basic at this point, it'll probably get more complicated of course, but we're just having one vertical leg and then one horizontal beam that's going to run straight back and sit on top of the concrete at the back, and then the roller bench is just going to bolt to the top of that. Now I'm trying to keep it so that there's not legs underneath, just then there's one clear area I like to sweep underneath or to store things. There's not like two legs in the middle in the way, so trying to keep all that sort of one big clear span, so it should be about 3.6 meters long. So that's the two sections of roller bench welded together. Got about a 400mm gap in the middle for the pedestal drill to go. Next step's just going to be to clean up all these welds. There's a fair bit to tidy up along there. I'd just like to note how good it is actually having this welding bay separate to the rest of the shed, because already I've made an absolute mess in here, and in the front shed there's nothing, so it's already proving worthwhile to have a separate area to keep all this just grinding dust and swarf from drilling and everything in. Yeah, so that's already proven worthwhile. Now, on to mounting the drill press on the bench. This is the drill press I've got. I had this in my old shed, but it was mounted in the corner on a bench, so it wasn't actually that usable. So moving in here, I really want to make this space actually nice for it, because if it's easy to get at, you're actually going to use it. And there has been times when I've used cordless drill, and I really should have been using this thing. So it is a bench mount unit, so it's not overly big to start with, but I've got a few little ideas on how I can make this thing fit even better. So we're just going to have to disassemble it. I want to look at a few things before we actually get to mounting it on the bench. So what I want to look at here is to see if I take this apart, if I can find a way to make this vertical bar or rod drop through this base plate. Now if I can do that, I can bolt this base plate to a bracket that I'll weld onto here, and then the beam can drop through the back and it can drop down below the bench. Now I'll probably end up running some legs back to the wall or something, but if I can do it this way, what it means is that all this space under here can stay free. So if I can make this work, I think it'll be really, really practical for how this is going to mount. Alright, so that wasn't quite as easy as I expected, but I have got the base plate off the drill press. I tried a hammer didn't work, tried a press didn't work, used fire worked. As you can see, we've got it off the bottom of the beam here. So here's my plan, to machine a little bit out of the center of this so that it's no longer a press fit, just a nice snug fit, but it'll slide over this. And then I want to drill some grub screws into the side of this, and then I'll be able to mount that to the base plate again, have this drop through it, disregard this. This is just to hold the base plate. You can wind the handle to wind it up and down, but it's honestly not really necessary, especially because this is all a fairly light drill press. It's nothing that heavy, so ditch that, and then I'll be able to mount this, drop that straight through, and we should be sweet to make up a bracket, and it'll fit on there nicely. So with the drill press disassembled so I can work on making up a bracket for it, I've actually found a couple of pieces of fairly solid, like 5mm thick right angle that are going to be perfect for this. So they're going to run straight back from the roller bench to the wall. And then I was going to use the whole base of the drill press, but instead I'm just going to use this piece here. So once I machine the center out of it, we should be right to literally bolt those 4 bolts there straight to the bracket I'm going to make out of some right angle. Now that I've cut the sections out of these pieces of right angle, we're going to go ahead and jump in the car, head down to my mate Brent's shed. Now he's got a lathe and he's going to give us a hand machining out the mount for the drill press. Alright, we're down here at Brent's shed. He's got the lathe and the mill, he's got it all happening, and he's going to sort this out for us, he reckons.
It's amazing how many friends you find when you got a lathe and a milling machine, but
it's funny that.
Here we are.
We're using the lathe to make sure we can evenly machine out the center of this base plate.
Yeah, it's still a bit tight, so we'll take another 0.2 off.
So using the lathe, we're able to incrementally machine out the inside of the base plate until it was a nice fit on the shaft.
So now that Brent's machined the mounting base so that it's no longer press fit, that this will just slide straight into it, we're now going to emery paper this. That's just so that everything works nicely and smoothly, so it'll drop through the base, but also so that the drill plate will slide up and down properly. Brand new.
Get the angle grinder with the logo on it.
Oh, there you go. So now that we've taken all the rust off the upright for the pedestal drill and Brent's machined out the base to fit, it now slides on there really well. So we're going to go ahead, and Brent's even agreed to drill and tap a grub screw thread in it to mount it. So that'll hold it in position once I've got the pedestal drill at height. Now I was going to do this with a cordless drill and then just tap it by hand. There's very minimal chance of it actually being straight. So Brent's going to chuck it in the mill and sort that out too while we're here.
All right, so we've got our freshly machined drill base set up in the chuck here. Now, what we're going to use to find the center, it's a little wobbler, I call it. It sits up here in the drill shop, and we'll start the machine. And what it does is it wobbles, and when we bring the job closer to it, it will slowly find its own center. And once it starts to become eccentric like that, see how it's come off? Then we know that that's the edge of the job. We'll zero out our DRO, and we'll find the center, the edge of this side. Start winding across until then it's just become off eccentric again. So that means that's the edge of that side. And then on our DRO, we've got measured 102.55. So I just split that in two. So say 51.25. Close enough there, I reckon. And that's the middle of our job. So that's dead center in the middle of the base.
So after finding the exact center of the base plate with the milling machine, we were then able to drill the hole ready to be tapped.
Right, so the way I like to tap threads on the milling machine is I'll put my tap in the chuck, the drill chuck. I'll start up the motor and I'll turn it off, and while the spindle's still spinning, I'll bring my quill down and it'll spin as much as it wants to, and it'll eventually come to a stop. Once that happens, I'll undo the drill chuck and I'll just use my tap handle and tap it the rest of the way. And that way I know I'm not going to break any taps.
And you know you got a dead square.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Like a glove.
Beautiful. Alright, so that is the parts of the pedestal drill sorted. Thanks Brent for making it look like I know what I'm doing, or at least you do.
No worries.
And we'll head back to the shed and get this thing fitted. So, now that we've machined that little bit out of the mounting base and taken the surface rust off that bit of tube that actually holds the pedestal drill, when we loosen off the grub screw, we can slide the base up and down. Now that's exactly how I wanted that to be. So the idea from here will be, I'll be taking that off for now, and we're going to mount this to the two pieces of right angle. Now these are the bits I'm going to weld to the back of the bench. So with that section notched out of the middle, I should be able to just drill 4 bolt holes in here. I think I'll drill and tap them. It is about 5mm plate, so it should be plenty strong enough. That'll get bolted on there, and then with it bolted in position, I'll chuck it on the back of the bench, tack it all in place, make sure we're happy with everything, and then weld it all in.
Now given that these right angles are 5mm thick 50 by 50 and that they're braced between the retaining wall and the steel rollers, they should be plenty strong enough to support the pedestal drill and any weight I'm going to put on it while I'm drilling.
That is the bracket for the drill press all welded off. Now I've welded it both sides of both these tubes, front and back. So with that all done, let's go ahead and drop the tube in, mount the drill press on top, and hopefully everything lines up.
But once I put it all together, I realised there was something that wasn't quite right.
So I've just run into a slight issue in that the drill plate won't go low enough to line up with the bench. Now when I measured all this up, I based it off how low the actual plate would sit and that the plate would clear these two cross beams, which it will, but I forgot to account for the thickness of that mounting base that we machined up. So I've already got a workaround for it, which is actually going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to unbolt it off the top side of the right angle and bolt it on the underside. Should still be plenty strong enough, and that'll give me the extra 30mm or so in order to drop that plate down in line with the rollers.
So with that quick fix sorted, I could then reassemble the tube and the drill plate, and it was all really starting to come together.
So that's a drill press all mounted up onto the bench. Now, as you can see, at the minute I've got this set dead level with the rollers, so I can roll steel straight through and drill it on the drill plate here. Now, if I do have anything that's a bit of an awkward shape or doesn't fit on the roller bench, I can still lift the drill up about another 300 to 400mm, and I can lift the drill plate up to suit. So if I've got anything larger, big brackets and that, I can still use that, no worries. On the same point, if I'm cutting heaps of steel and I don't want to be sliding it all across the drill plate, I can drop that drill plate down about 20mm, so it's clear of the rollers and I can roll steel straight through. So with the drill press all done, the next thing I'm going to do is just add a couple more little brackets back here, and then I'm going to make some brackets up against the wall in the corner here to mount my steel rack. Now for the actual steel rack that's going on these brackets, I'm going to be using the King Chrome multi-purpose racking. It's probably worth noting that the shelves or racking horizontal parts actually are already on an angle. So if you were to bolt that to a dead vertical wall, you'd still end up with a nice little slope there to hold everything on the shelves. I've just leaned the brackets back a bit further because I thought I'm going to be leaning over the bench to drop steel and that on. Probably going to be a bit easier having it back on a bit of an angle, just makes everything a bit nicer. So with the weight of the pedestal drill and everything, the front of the bench had actually dropped about 5mm. So I've just used a little Porto kit, lifted up the front of the bench, then drilled and nut and bolted the little stay underneath here. So that's just sitting in the back corner there, and it's still kept the floor nice and open. It's actually surprisingly strong. It's made this bench properly solid now. Not that there was much movement in it before, but now there's none. So that's worked, and we're on to mounting our little brackets back here.
So assembling this racking is as easy as installing a few screws into the vertical pieces, and that sets the height of the racks themselves. Then I just drilled and tapped some threads into the frame and mounted the racks. Now with the racks mounted onto the frame, I can get some of my steel stock off the shed floor and out of the way.
So I managed to get nearly all of my steel up on the racking and out of the way. Now this may not look like it's a lot of steel, but let me tell you, when it is across your workshop floor, it actually takes up a fair bit of space. So it's great to have it up on the rack, out of the way, and where I can actually see what I've got when I need it. Now the next step is going to be to add just a little bit more storage behind the roller bench back here. Now to do this, I'm going to use a shelf that's left over from the industrial racking that I put in the storeroom. Now if you remember, when I put all that together, I actually didn't put one of the top sections in, as I used one section as a tyre rack. So I've still got that mesh left over, and I think it'll fit perfect back here. So I'm just going to add a couple of little braces in to hold that in position, cut that mesh down to suit, and that's going to go back here just for a shelf, mostly for steel while you're working on it, because you'll find if you've done this before, when you're using a saw, especially on a roller bench, you need somewhere to stack the pieces you've actually cut. Say I want to cut, 6 pieces that are 200mm long. There's nowhere to stack them, so they end up in your way. I'm going to put a shelf back here so I can just cut and place it over the back, out of the way. So after finishing off adding the shelf to the back of the roller bench, I've gone along and put all my grinder wheels on the pegboard up here. Now let me tell you, I had no idea how many of these things that were kicking around in the workshop and generally just scattered about, but putting them up on the wall there is going to make them pretty hard to miss. So with the roller bench all sorted, it was time to give the saw a bit of a clean up. So I took this thing off its stand and took about 40 years worth of old cutting oil and metal filings off this thing. Also cleaned out the tank in the base for the cutting fluid and got the whole pump system running again, so all that works, and chucked a new blade on it. Now the base itself I had to lift about 100mm, or actually 95mm. So what I did is I knocked 5mm off the bottom of the legs and cut its existing feet off, and then welded a piece of 100mm tube to the bottom of all the legs. I added a couple of braces as well, just so I had somewhere to mount it, and bolted this thing into the floor so it's not going to move. Now that's ended up lined up dead on horizontal with the roller bench, and also the back of the vise is lined up with the back of the roller bench. So it's a straight run to bring a length of steel straight through the saw, cut it, and you're straight out the other side onto the rollers. Now I'm going to get this place cleaned up because the boys are on their way over, and we're going to do a run through of just how everything's turned out.
Hope you guys are enjoying the episode. Just quickly wanted to let you know that the Aussie Arvos merch has all been restocked. So we got the hoodies. You guys have been asking for these ones. It's been bloody cold, so all the sizes are there. We've also got the OG map tee, so in the olive, the navy, and the black, as well as a new color in the charcoal. Also, the new style tees are up on there, as well as the Aussie Arvos beanies, the cooler, and of course the Aussie Arvos sticker. So make sure you head over there and check it out and enjoy the rest of the episode.
All right, so Liam's come around to check out the new welding bay setup. Let's go in there and check it out.
Yeah, I'm keen to see it. Based off the expectations of when I came and inspected the shed the first time, I'm back. I'm like a building inspector. Every time Dan does something, I got to come and suss it out. But my expectations are high. All right, into the new welding bay, or the fabrication bay.
First impressions, what do you reckon?
I'm impressed with how much stuff you've managed to fit in what is, well, it looks like a lot smaller space, but it kind of actually looks like bigger now that you've utilised it all.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of been the part that took the most thought, is like getting all this gear into a relatively small area. As you said, it's not a huge room back here, so trying to make the most of it.
Yeah, well, it looks like you've done a good job. But anyway, give us the run through. If you've, I don't know, you just got a load of steel in or something. Like, it looks like there's a bit of a process. So
yeah, that's it. So I've set everything up. So for example, like I said, get a load of steel in to make, say, just a frame for something. Right, open your door up to outside. You can bring an 8 metre length of steel, 6 metre length straight in the door. Right, you're straight on the saw. Now this is a cold cut saw, and bang, straight on the bench. Say for example, this bit of steel in the saw on. You cut your steel to length, right? Saw off. You're done, right?
Yeah,
that's easy. So you got your length of steel, rag there, for obvious reasons. Right, straight across to the pedestal drill. Straight across the roller bench.
I like these.
Yeah, they're nice,
rollers.
Be handy with heavier steel.
Yeah.
Straight onto the drill. All right, now say for example, obviously you need mount holes for something if you have an actual plan drawn up.
Yeah.
Straight on the pedestal drill on, bang, right. So it's easy. So everything's sort of, I guess, in order.
It's like a workflow.
Yeah.
In the orders that you would normally do it in.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Now you got your bit of steel, you got your hole drilled. I have got both the grinders sitting there in case I need to do any sort of hand work. Touching up. Bench grinder back here. So again, big sections out of the steel, anything like that.
Yeah.
Straight on the bench grinder, get into that. Belt linishes on the wall right behind you there, Liam. So bang, linishes on. Want to take your edges off.
Yeah.
If you've used a cold cut saw, you know they'll leave some pretty big burrs. That's going to be handy for that. Then chuck your steel straight on your workbench. You can cut the rest if you need it. Straight on the workbench, welder on, weld up your frame. So I guess it's a flow the whole way around.
You need to get some of those like big yellow arrows that like direct you around the room.
Direction the whole way around. And then of course we've got our vise at the end here.
Of course. I had heard about this.
Yeah. So I reckon that should be solid enough. I'll put it just inside the door. So if there's anything.
Pull the slab out of the ground.
Yeah, look, I did test it. I sort of hit the frame with a hammer and expected it to sort of,
Yeah.
But it just donk.
Far out. That's a very impressive bit of kit, that is.
Yeah. So that's set just inside the door. So for example, there's something you're working on a car that doesn't want to move, or trying to get something apart. Yeah, straight in the door, and of course it's lined up just inside the door frame, so you can hang steel straight through.
Far out. That's awesome.
And that's been, like I said, the most important part was planning it out. So things exactly like that. It's a small room, but you can hang steel through that door.
Yeah, exactly.
The same with the saw over here. Is your long lengths of steel, you can hang them out the other door.
Yeah.
So everything sort of makes sense. The same goes with the back wall. I did mention it earlier, but if I want to run, for example, an 8 metre length and I need to cut, there's only about 3.6 metres here, so I want to cut it dead in half. I haven't done it yet, but my plan was I could cut a little door in here.
Oh, like a little hatch.
Yeah. So hence why I've made the roller bench above the concrete wall. Yeah. I can run steel straight through.
Well, this is at a great working height anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of like...
Oh, that's the biggest thing. I've found that so often, and I mean, I guess I'm not tall, but I'm not short either.
Not short, yeah.
I feel like benches, a lot of work benches are just made for shorter people.
Yeah,
They're just down here, especially welding. I tend to sit very close to things, and by you do it for half an hour, and you just end up with a sore back.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Making everything sort of, I guess, hip height,
It's built for Dan.
Yeah,
it's a Dan specific.
Well, you're setting up your own shed. You can set it up for yourself.
Right. Yeah, you can afford to. That's it. And aside from just having like all the different tools and stuff, I've noticed you've got your nice, good set of racks for all like your lengths of material, shorter lengths. And then also, I couldn't help but notice this thing because I would like something like this at home. Yeah. The organisation of this board is insane.
Mate, I had no idea how many different grinding wheels I had until I put them there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's like, I just need that, it's there. So the idea is, you have all this stuff and it's tucked away, and it's under a dusty bench somewhere.
Yeah.
And you end up buying more because
you
just can't find it, you don't know you've got it. So it's on the wall, it's right there. It's like, oh, I need a cut-off wheel, bang. I need a flap wheel, bang.
That's the way to do it, definitely.
Yes, and steel storage is exactly the same. You end up buying more steel because you don't know you've got it.
Yeah, exactly right,
So having that up on that rack is, going to be super handy. It's already great. You walk in, you're like, I need a piece of, 25 by 25.
Yeah, it's easy to see,
it's
easy
there.
to get, that's it. Perfect.
So that's it for now for the setup of the fabrication bay. Let us know if there's anything you guys think I could move around or add to this room to make it a bit better, and keep an eye out because you'll definitely be seeing this room get put to good use in the future.